Okay, I am live. We are live, ladies. And I'm so excited by this particular episode because, as I've mentioned, I've interviewed maybe about 12, maybe 12 survivors, maybe 15 when I count the men. But I wanted to have you guys back. And I know a couple of us are having, you guys are having trouble getting on, but you guys have so much to share that I think we'll be okay. So welcome back to Tea Talks, and I am going to have you guys just introduce yourself real quick. I'll start with Lauren because she's on the top right, and then I'll go down to Sally, and then I'll go across to Renee. So Lauren, give us a quick introduction about you and just your quick journey.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Lauren Huffmaster, and I have been living with cancer for 8 years. I was originally diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, and then after a couple of years of treatments, they found out that I was already stage 4. So I've been living with stage 4 metastatic disease for almost exactly 6 years now. When I was diagnosed with stage 4, I realized this was the rest of my life. This wasn't just a moment or a window in time. And so I wanted to really use this story to bring change, to bring good to the experience of cancer. And so I founded Adventure Therapy Foundation. And since that time, I've really found my voice. I began a podcast called Adventures with Scars. I'm releasing a book at the end of the year, and just continuing to work on what I call the emotional side effects of cancer, which I think is the experience we all have that's not yet been defined very well. And so I'm really working to start a conversation on that.
And I want to delve into that whole emotional piece today because it's really huge and we don't speak enough about it. All right, go ahead, Miss Sally. You're next.
I almost want to say like what she said because there's so much that is similar to our stories as Lauren and I figured out in the call a few minutes ago. I'm Sally Wolf. I'm in New York City, and I also am living, and I like to say thriving, with a stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. I was first diagnosed almost 8 years ago with what was considered an early stage 2 cancer. And then about 5.5 years ago, there was both another lump here, even though I had implants, and also it had metastasized to my hip. So that, like Lauren said, left me in this is the rest of my life. And also alongside that obstacle, I have, knock wood, been incredibly fortunate with my treatment and also had the opportunity to lean into full well-being and really pivot a career that was about 20 years as a media executive and shifting into the well-being space after studying positive psychology while I was in early stage treatment and cancer. So I now have a small company called Lightworks where I bring well-being solutions into companies, helping executives and their teams to flourish, drawing on both the real life lived experience of something that's really challenging, as well as all the science behind things like post-traumatic growth and meaning and purpose and all that good stuff. And I studied psychology in college, all these like 30 years ago, and was a psych major at Harvard and never learned that. So I very much believe that I'm on this path for some reason to help bring light to others.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Renee?
I'm so inspired by each person who's speaking today. I'm Dr. Renee Exelbert. I'm a psychologist and a personal trainer. I was working as a psychologist in a pediatric cancer center, and this is when we see the world has 6 degrees of separation. I was there working with children and adolescents diagnosed with cancer for 6 years. And after I left in April, and in July, I was diagnosed with my own breast cancer. I was diagnosed when I was 37, and I had a recurrence 7 years later. I'm not going to tell you, not going to figure out the whole age thing here. And I became really, really involved in any way that I can empower myself during the cancer journey. I became very involved in exercise and nutrition. I became a certified personal trainer. I became completely clean in my eating. I became a figure competitor where I stood on stage in my stripper heels and my bikini and flexed my muscles. And I ended up opening a center called the Metamorphosis Center for Psychological and Physical Change, where I do a really unique blend of exercise, psychotherapy, and visualizations. I basically use exercise in conjunction with visualizations to sort of augment the struggle that the person is experiencing. And I also wrote a book called Chemo Muscles, Lessons Learned from Being a Psycho-Oncologist and Cancer Patient. And I'm incredibly blessed to be with you all today.
Thank you, ladies. Now, what I want to do today is not so much stay on the actual cancer treatments and so forth, but I want to talk about, because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, how has this impacted your lives? And so what has been the impact on your daily life? As whether your cancer is in remission, like Renee or myself, or whether it's like you guys at stage 4 and getting treatment, it's impacted our lives. Once you've had it, you're not this, you're never the same in your thinking, better or for worse. So what has been the impact on your life? Now, the last time I saw Lauren, which was a few months ago, Lauren had hair. Okay, but I remember Lauren mentioning on that call that she's gonna have to go back in again. And of course, I follow you all online, so I know what happened. So what is and as you guys said in your introduction, you guys are out there living though. You guys are thriving, doing stuff, podcasts, writing books. I mean, very impressive group here. But Lauren, what has been the impact on your daily life?
Absolutely. I think for me, and this is really what inspires a lot of my work, is my children, right? When I was diagnosed, my kids were 2, 4, and 6. And so the idea that they would never have a memory that wasn't impacted by cancer was just very heavy on who I was. And a lot of the work that I do is because cancer can impact them, as you said, for better or for worse.
Yes.
And I needed to live a life. I needed to choose a mental path. I needed to believe in a way that cancer's impact on my children would only be for the better, that they would be, yes, have to be more resilient, but they could be more hopeful. They could be more empathetic. They could serve others well. They could understand the hurts of the world, but also that there's good present in all things. And I think that for my family, I'll tell a really quick story. I did just have to go back into chemo. I was very stable for about 5 years on my treatments. And then my cancer mutated, because that's what it likes to do. And when it did that, I was going to go into chemo. So we put out on social media that if you wanted to help us, like, here are a few ways to do that. And we had to shave my head. And I told the people the day we were going to shave my head. And that day we got a pile of presents. Like, when we opened the door, there was like a mountain that sort of fell on us of Amazon packages. And I think that these are the kinds of ways cancer impacts my family. We had to shave my head, and my kids were really torn up about that. They don't want to see me sick, looking sick, right?
Right.
But at the same time, there was so much kindness and so much good. And it felt like Christmas morning, and we got to balance the really hard with the really good. And I think that is what I'm always trying to do for my family, because cancer is not just about me. I'm just a patient. It's about us, all of those who love me, who live in the house with me, and how we walk through cancer together. And so I think that for me, the most important way cancer is impacting my life is how it impacts my family. And I work every day to make sure it's impacting them so they can be stronger. They can be more hopeful, and not so that they get drugged down into despair or we become weak or frail as a family. So I think that is something that's overlooked. We talk about breast cancer and the patient, but we really need to be talking about families, the families that are impacted by cancer, and how cancer is already impacting that next generation. And so that's really the focus of my work and my everyday.
I just want to pause right there. That is so beautiful. And what came to my mind as you were talking, Lauren, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and everyone's dressed up in pink, and we're doing all this wonderful stuff. Great. However, it's the little things. When you mention about the packages from Amazon, right, and the impact that made on your family, because you're going through a hard thing, but to show that people cares and loves you. This is something, if you're watching and you want to do something in Breast Cancer Month and you didn't get to go to one of those walks or whatever, but you know someone who's struggling and you can find their address or find a way to get, just a care packet or just a gift, not necessarily a care packet. It could just be a normal gift, even if it's to the family members. That is such a practical thing that you can do that would make such a big difference. Thank you for sharing that story. All right, next we're going to keep going on. Sally, how has it impacted your daily life?
I mean, so I'm not a mom, although I am an auntie ×3 to kids who I think are seemingly very similar in age to Lauren's. And so I also would say a lot of similar things to what Lauren just shared in terms of the impact on the family and also the balance between what's hard and what are some of the most beautiful life experiences I've ever had, because cancer has opened up the opportunity for deeper connection and more vulnerable connection with other people. From the very outset for me, family is my parents, who are probably logged in. I can't see who's listening right now, but they're like always in my front row. And so my parents and my siblings, and then my sister is married and has, her husband, who's like my extra brother, and then 3 kids. And so from the very beginning, I have said, and I will always say, it's been my body, but my family's cancer. And, there were extra chairs brought into every consult. Like I remember one hospital said, you could, and this was not during COVID, but you only bring 1 or 2 people. And I was like, oh no, like just FYI, like there's a whole team of wolves coming and a whole pack of wolves coming. And that was really how it was and how it's remained. And I also will say that the love and the kindness, that the love and the support and the kindness that I have been privileged to feel in the past 8 years, I hope everyone gets to feel that in their lifetimes. And I hope it doesn't take a cancer diagnosis. But the reality is every person, if you are alive, you will experience some loss of body parts, in the cancer journey, of body parts, of like health, or of whatever it is. But even without a cancer diagnosis, anyone who is alive, who leans into life and connection, is also going to experience some version of heartache, of grief, of loss. And those moments are incredibly challenging and also offer to connect us in even deeper ways when we can say, I'm going to open my heart to you, and I'm going to listen and hear and see your heart as well. And so I consider cancer to be my greatest teacher. I consider it to be a giver of opportunities as well as a giver of obstacles. And I talk about dance a lot and really let myself be present in that dance, in the fear and the anxiety that continue to exist, and also the joy and the opportunity for writing. Everyone on this panel seemingly has already written a book, is in the process of writing a book. I didn't say it in my introduction, but that's something I'm working on as well. And that may not have happened without cancer. So, it's a constantly evolving, I like to call it the both end of cancer.
Yeah. I love that. The yin and the yang of cancer, right? The ups and the downs, the mountains and the valleys, the lessons and the pains, right? It's all there. Something that you said, and I'm hoping as doctors are listening, because we have this conversation at our conferences at Total Health. Cancer is a community illness, your own personal community. And when you mentioned about the extra chairs, it's for doctors, I understand there are that 15 minutes that they got to talk to you, 15, 20 minutes. But for you, the patient, we want the army. We want the people there. And so as you mentioned that, pull up a chair. This is how your patients will thrive and get through it when we have that support. So thank you for sharing that. Renee, what's been the impacts on your daily life?
I'm really sort of mesmerized. I'm really blown away by seriously, like really blown away by.
Georgia.
Yeah, seriously, really, I'm so honored to be amongst all of you. There are so many gifts, and it's difficult to say what comes from cancer because, I was diagnosed when I was 37 years old. So much of my identity was still forming. But I will say that much of my life, I was a perfectionist. I was extremely driven. If you look at my resume, I have, all of the top programs, busted my butt to do all those things. And I think when I was first diagnosed, I felt so imperfect. And when I went through my surgeries, so imperfect. And I really struggled with that level of vulnerability and seeing myself really as fragile and weak. And at the same time, I was a psychologist, so I was really grappling with the balance between being a caregiver and somebody very much needing care, and figuring out the balance between disclosing my diagnosis or not, which is, part of something that I wrote in my book. But I think one of the greatest gifts that I've gotten from cancer is, I almost describe it like an onion, like reaching all of the deeper levels of yourself, and first feeling like all the external layers were the most important. And once you go through cancer, seeing that none of those are really at all important. And that when you strip away almost everything, because often that's what cancer does, it strips away pretty much everything. When you're left with this vulnerable self, you are really strong, and you see how much you can withstand and what you're really made out of. And I think for me, that was like therapy 101, quick, to sort of overcome perfectionism and see that the thing that makes me the strongest is everything that I've overcome. It has helped me immeasurably in my life, but more notably in my relationships, because I try to be very present. And as a therapist, I think that it has enabled me to really connect with people who have experienced any kind of trauma, because I get it. And I think it's allowed me to be more connected. And in terms of being a healthcare professional, one of the things that I talk about a lot is our need to advocate for ourselves amongst healthcare professionals, because we're so disempowered, and there's so many things that healthcare professionals can do to make our journey better, right? And there's just a lack of knowledge, from writing notes to eye contact, from not looking in the eye to the ultrasound person who has your medical results not given in a timely fashion. I mean, there are countless ways that we can improve upon that. And conversely, as a healthcare professional myself, it has helped me be much more sensitive to the way that I deliver my news. So,
yes, that's awesome. I'll just say, I'm not going to talk too much about myself, but when Lauren spoke about her children, what popped in my head, because my diagnosis came when my kids were already older, and I was already a grandmother. We didn't want to tell my granddaughter too much because she was only 5. But one of the things that I would just say to moms out there, or maybe dads with a cancer diagnosis, you tend to start to think something that Lauren said about the next generation, what's going to happen, or now that I have it, because no one above me had it. It was not in my family. So now I'm the starter. Is this gene now here in me that's going to, trickle down to them? So I found myself initially trying to say, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't do this. And I'm like, wait a second. They have to live. Yes, we have knowledge based on our cancer. Like someone said, began eating clean and so on and so forth, and exercise, which we know is good. But I'll just caution, women out there they're well-intentioned, like myself. I was well-intentioned, but I could see the strain it was bringing to my kids, like of that fear of like, I don't want you to have to go through anything, but if you would do these things from now in your, early 30s or late 20s, then, and it's not true, because they're clean eaters and exercisers who get diagnosed. So, I just wanted to just say that. I'm going to take a couple questions from the audience because there's some here, and then I'll have a couple more for you guys. So what attributes do you think survivors need to become thrivers? Anyone can go. It's going to be free flow.
I'm such a rule follower. I was waiting for you to call on me. So share this, at least from my perspective. I actually just came on here having just taught a corporate workshop on meaning and purpose. And one of the things that I love to talk about, because I love the science behind it, is that we all have the capacity to grow through what we go through. Mm-hmm. And there is something called post-traumatic growth. And everyone's heard of PTSD. And very, very, very few people have heard of post-traumatic growth, which is such a disservice to all of us. Because if we make a bell curve of resilience and PTSD is on one side and post-traumatic growth is on the other side, right? Which would all of us choose, regardless of cancer. And so really being able to tap into our stories and reflect backward in a way where we can make meaning, because meaning is subjective and it's ours to make. And Lauren and I can both sit here and our charts could look similar and we could tell you very different ways that we've made meaning out of a very seemingly similar timeline and journey and all of that. And so it's just the beauty of meaning, of making meaning, is that it's yours to make. It's purely subjective. There's no right or wrong, but it is a choice to lean into a difficult life experience in a way where we are seeking meaning, where we are choosing it and making it. And when we do that, that helps to get us to a place of that post-traumatic growth, of that growing through what we go through. And I like to talk about glowing on the other side of it. So if you know the go, grow, glow, that's a lot of that survivorship into thrivership, I think. And that is true for an early stage survivor, a previvor who has a genetic predisposition, but has been fortunate enough to get ahead of it, and true for a thriver too. The one last piece I'll add is I do think there's a little bit of, I don't know, it's almost like scope creep or confusion in the cancer community. I always heard the term thriver as one that was very much used for someone who's in it continuously, for stage 4 community. And I have seen a lot of early stage survivors start to lean into that thriver term because it's such a beautiful term. I think anyone can be thriving, but I also believe that in cancer land and breast cancer land, where so little attention exists focused on the metastatic community, I do think it is an important distinction to let thrivers be those of us who are living with stage 4, because it lets us identify with a word that to me feels aspirational and positive and sets us apart, because survivor to me also implies that, it's done. It's your treatment part's done and it's not.
Yeah. That is so, Lauren, I want you to take the question about snapping back from despair when it comes. But before we go to that, there was so much said here by Sally. I want to put something back up here, which I want Dr. Renee to go into, because I really love that. And I'm honestly, I might have heard it maybe once in my life, but definitely not enough. Everyone knows about PTSD, but the term post-traumatic growth, I want to hear a little bit more about that, because those of us who've gone through cancer and gone through it and over strong, right, victoriously, we understand the post-traumatic growth. I didn't have a name for it, but we get it. You've changed. You've become stronger. Dr. Renee, do you have any data or any information on that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a real thing. And one of the things that, we know is that people aren't born with resiliency. Resiliency is a muscle, and you can work the muscle. And so when we talk about post-traumatic growth, it's quite possible to go through a trauma and just be left feeling traumatized. But it's also quite possible to go through a trauma and grow and come out the other end a deeper, stronger, richer person. And that's what post-traumatic growth is. And I think one of the things that we're all talking about is how much we have gotten from cancer. And, that's really what post-traumatic growth is, that you exceed where you were in a different kind of way. And I think that when we think about the attributes of resiliency, I'm coming back to the question before, what's an important aspect, right? This resiliency and this idea of, taking everything that you've been through, and then that becomes all that you could put out into the world. When I teach students who are becoming master level therapists, some of them say, I'm not going to be good at this because I have anxiety, because I have OCD. And I try to explain to them that they are going to be the very best at this because of that, right? That is their gift that they are going to take to the world and impart to others. And so that's really post-traumatic growth. This is a gift. And that what we do with, we bring this out to the world and we become richer, deeper, right? Where I don't think any of us would have been writing, maybe, I don't know, but I don't think we would have been writing books. I don't think you would have been doing this podcast. I don't think that I would be like on a board for cancer. I don't think that I would have been a personal trainer or a figure competitor or any of those things had it not been for cancer. And so that is really the definition of taking what, what hurts and really growing from it.
Well said. Well said. Lauren, what is your number one strategy for snapping back from despair when it comes?
I think this is a good question for me right now because I did just start chemo. I lost my hair. I have PET scan tomorrow. I think these are all like trigger points for us who are walking through cancer. When I don't know what tomorrow is going to tell me, and I don't know if I like the way I look when I wake up, I really have to focus on gratitude. Like that's my beginning. That's a good place to start. Because my hope can grow frail over time, right? There isn't a cure. I don't have the plan for my next line of treatment, but so hope comes and goes in waves, but gratitude is really something that's tangible that I can look at today. I can look at on the way to school every morning. With my kids, we talk about the good things. So we look at the sunrise that's happening, even though it's a sunrise and it should have been like, we shouldn't be driving in the sunrise, but still it's beautiful. And we look at the fall colors and we talk about all the good things that we're going to experience in that day. And I think that just is a place to begin because so much of life is about what we choose to focus on, where our mind is going. Is my mind focusing on the PET scan tomorrow and what all the triggers and all the things that might happen from that? No, my mind today is going to focus on what's good today and all the good things that have happened in the past and the people in my life. And that keeps me out of sort of a fear cycle where instead of getting circling harder and harder and more difficult things and getting into the sort of vague blackness of despair, instead I'm focusing on what has brought me joy in the past, what has brought me joy this morning, and allowing my brain to really rest there and not jump to conclusions about what might happen in the future.
Thank you for sharing that because it's so true. We all know, no matter how strong we look, there are those moments of fear, little moments, even though we are, we are on the post-traumatic growth side, there are times when those thoughts can be a little bit pervasive. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to go to you, Sally. Talk us a little bit about your pole dancing because talk us about your dancing with those poles because, hey, we need to hear that story.
So funny. Everyone loves to talk about this. I don't even know why it came up right before we went live. But so I danced my way through cancer. I discovered what is pole dancing and really sort of higher level, a sensual, feminine, erotic movement, and just really kind of becoming comfortable with the flow of the body. I discovered it 10 years before I was ever diagnosed with cancer, tried it on a whim, literally to be a good friend to a friend who wanted to go to a class. It was way too cool for me, way too risque for me. And I fell in love with it in part because we are such overthinkers as humans. And I am about as cerebral as a human could get, unrelated to cancer. I went to Harvard undergrad. I have 2 masters from Stanford. I was, very much over-indexing on my brain throughout my life. And then in my professional life, from school to work, and learning to speak with my body and learning to listen to my body. And by the way, as a gymnast, like in my childhood, loved the uneven bars, learning to twirl around a bar again. It didn't matter to me that it was vertical instead of horizontal. It was fun. And I see my niece, I have a nephew and 2 nieces, and the middle is an incredible gymnast. And I took her to gymnastics yesterday and watched her on the bars. And well, adults should get to do that too. And so I fell in love with the pole and with the sensual movement because it was very liberating to not have to be able to speak and tell a story in a 3-minute song without having to open my mouth. That was a really amazing thing to learn. And then I suddenly had a cancer diagnosis, first one and then a couple more, and to lose my breasts and lose my hair, which are, arguably for so many of us are the most outwardly feminine body parts, and yet have so much comfort in being able to move all of that through my body, not to get stuck, right? A lot of us get stuck in feelings and emotions and don't release them. So I had a space, I called my dance studio my lab. I got to practice touching myself. It didn't have to be in the shower by myself when I was looking at my scars. It could be in a community of sisters, and also feel my beauty in that, right? There are no mirrors in my dance studio. It was actually me believing in my beauty, in still being beautiful, not only still, but actually in radiating even more beauty through my cancer journey, because I felt such a deeper connection to myself and my body. And so in the spirit of we never know why things come into our lives, I started pole dancing on a whim. It was very much, I went to a class with a friend. I thought it would be a one-time thing. 20 years later, literally almost 20 years later, I'm still doing it. She dropped out after 3 months. So, what a gift though, because for me, it's been an incredible gift throughout cancer and just in life in general. And I think that I'm seeing some nods on the screen, we're not taught to really understand and process through our bodies. Kids do it. The last thing I'll say on this is if everyone has spoken to kids, granddaughter or two, kids are amazing. Yes. At expressing themselves through their bodies, right? It's the tantrum that becomes pure happiness 2 minutes later because they don't get stuck in their emotion. And as adults, we start saying we're fine when we're not. We start, acting like everything's okay when it's not. We don't express anger or frustration because we don't want to piss someone else off or offend them. And then we hold it inside of us. And so dance is something that I think can really help any of us to really just express in a really full and healthy way, and then get to the other side of whatever it is. I'm not saying get to the other side of cancer like it's done, right, but dance through that sadness, dance through that anger, dance through whatever it is. And in a 4-minute song, you can be angry, sad, joyful, like all of the above, which is amazing.
Yeah, I want to ask a question that may seem counterintuitive to people. Some people have, when you get a cancer diagnosis, people stop dreaming. Sometimes we just stop dreaming, right? You just stop dreaming about the future. So my question, I have only this and then one last one after this, but what is your vision for your future? I mean, anyone can take it first. And the reason why I ask this question is for the cancer patient out there, the newly diagnosed, whose vision tend to be that coffin, because that's kind of when you're cancer, you think grave, cancer to the grave. And then it really takes that post-traumatic growth. It takes the evolution. It takes, just courage and prayer and faith to get to a place where you can actually think, I can have a future. And I just want to put that question out there for not just you guys, but for the listeners as well, to still dream. Okay, to still dream. You guys are writing books. I've written books. To still dream. None of us know what the future holds. I think, you guys, might have been, Lauren might have said, or maybe one other guest had said, I'm going to see a cure in my lifetime. That's the future. We have no control over it. We didn't have any control over this cancer coming into our bodies, right? So, but you have control over your thoughts. And so this is for you guys, but it's also for that cancer patient, whether they're newly diagnosed or re-diagnosed or whatever. What is your vision for your future? What do you see? What do you see that you haven't done yet that you want to do, that you're believing that you're going to be able to do? We're not going to put the limits on. We're not going to put the fear factors on, which we know sit side by side with hope. But we're just going to go right now through the prism of, what haven't I done yet that I want to do?
Yeah, I can respond to that. This is sort of in line with what we were talking about earlier with gratitude, right? Like
Yes.
for me, it's when you're talking about dreams for the future, my dreams have very much come back to like this present moment, living right now, and being mindful and going through my life in a very mindful way. So that means when I'm having my coffee, smelling it and smelling the hazelnut and feeling the warmth of the mug, and when I'm sitting with my children, putting my cell phone down and being incredibly engaged, and when I go outside, feeling the wind on my face or the sun and hearing the birds. And so for me, it's a meditational way of living that that I think is like really important. And in terms of my dreams, I really feel like all of the things that I have dreamt for myself have all been coming true. And so I feel like I'm living my dreams. Being here is I'm living one of my dreams, right? This is all part of it. And when I think about the future, my dreams become much more simplistic. They're more about just spending time with my kids and one day, God willing, becoming a grandma, right? Like my dreams for the future are not career focused. They're more just about being surrounded by the people that I love and continuing to do what I've been, blessed to be able to do, and feeling grateful for it every day.
Awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned it's not career focused, because when we hear vision, especially because we're educated people and we're in the world, we're entrepreneurs and we're doing great things, doesn't mean career necessarily. It's just, what do you see? What haven't you done yet? Some of you have written books and, have podcasts. What haven't you done yet that you think that's out there for you to do?
I definitely like to respond. Part of my story is that when I was first diagnosed stage 4, I lived in this mentality of the only thing left was to die. And for 12 weeks, I every day woke up and tried to die better, make sure my house was cleaner and my closet was organized. And that was all that I could envision, until a breaking point when I realized no matter what I did, I couldn't die better. The problem was I wasn't living while I was dying better. And I flipped my perspective around and I really started dreaming for big things that I didn't know how were possible I would ever get even close to. But I also didn't ever dream I was going to have 8 years to pursue them. And I could have spent 8 years trying to die well. And I'm very thankful that I didn't. So I'm going to boldly declare my dream. My dream is literally to change the experience of cancer. And I say that all the time. I think there's so much being invested in the cancer experience, but there's so much more that needs to be done. Like I said before, it's all about mental health for me. It's about perspective and establishing. What I want to do is establish that there is a typical emotional side effects of cancer, that we're all experiencing similar emotional things, but they've not been defined yet. And therefore there's no tools for them yet, because until we define what they are, we can't start solving the problem and giving people what they need to help overcome those. And it's my life goal to bring all of this to the forefront, to define it, to have us agree on it, and then to bring the tools forward and see that done, so that the next generation is not carrying the burdens, the emotional burdens of this generation. And this is maybe career, but it's mostly legacy. It's really about stopping a cycle. I think the cancer of tomorrow is not the cancer of last week. And I don't want to carry the emotional baggage of last week into tomorrow. And so I think it's my responsibility almost to stand and to make sure, we are aware of the choices we're making mentally. And this is my dream, to bring this change into the world.
I love it. Something you said, Lauren, which is so true. It's very true. And we don't have time to go into all of that, but the cancer, today's cancer is not tomorrow's cancer. It certainly wasn't the cancer of 12 years ago. Yet we have the stigma, the burden, the emotional feelings tied into what people are saying around us who experienced it 12, 15, 20 years ago. And it's on us, and it's a burden. And so I am going to believe with you that you will be able to bring tools to the marketplace that can really help to shift the paradigms of how we think about this whole emotional piece. So thank you for sharing that. Sally?
Sure. So Lauren just used two words that I think a lot about. One is responsibility. The other is legacy. And earlier there was that conversation about job and kind of leaning into the professional path. And all three of those are what I would say I personally lean into in this journey. So the responsibility piece is I feel a responsibility to share my journey and to bring hope to others. Because when I got that kick in the gut call saying my cancer had metastasized after doing quote unquote everything right, like I'd gotten screened since I was 32, since my mom had breast cancer. And thank goodness she's still, we were about to celebrate her 80th birthday and came back. And so I did all the things and I still ended up in this stage 4 situation. And so that said, when I got that call, that was the moment. Lauren just described her 12 weeks. I was like, that kick in the gut. I know where I was on 23rd Street. I was sobbing because I thought you either got to be cured or you died. And I have come to realize that there can be this middle lane. And as long as science stays one step ahead, you can live that middle lane. There are people who have already lived that middle lane for decades. And now there's so much else available to us. And so I very much felt that responsibility to help others to see people like themselves ahead of themselves, because I didn't know a me 5.5 years ago.
Right.
Also, as someone who is white, cis, female, upper middle class or upper class socioeconomically, who has good health insurance, who lives in New York City and has the best doctors. I mean, I have 2 oncologists at 2 hospitals that I have built a team out of. So first for both of them, but they're doing it because I kind of said, hey, here's what we're going to do. And so the amount of privilege that I have to be able to say and share all of that, there's a responsibility that comes with that, to speak up when I see a clinical trial that doesn't have diversity, to speak up when I see all the mistakes in my own billing that I know aren't going to bankrupt me, that I know are incorrect. Well, what about the person that's going to be so derailed from that? So first of all, the responsibility piece is huge. The purpose piece and the hope piece, and just sort of leaning into that more, going back to that job. There are jobs, there are careers, and there are callings. So I will say I'm not as focused anymore on finding that dream, quote unquote, job or career. I love my work right now because it feels like a calling. And I credit cancer with taking me into that, not away from anything. I pivoted everything because of cancer. And all of us have said, right? Some version of, I wouldn't be able to write this book without cancer. I wouldn't be in a Netflix documentary dancing bald without. I wouldn't be, right? It doesn't mean, I want to go back to that PTG thing. One last thing I'll say, doesn't mean we would have, any of us would have chosen cancer.
Right.
It just means that, or whatever difficult thing another listener may be navigating in his or her, their own lives. It just means that alongside the card that we were dealt, right, the thing we might not have chosen, there have been many other choices that we have been able to make, that we have chosen to make, that bring us closer to that calling instead of a job, that opportunity alongside the obstacle. And that's that both end, that responsibility. And the last thing, the real last thing, the legacy thing, because Lauren said, all of us are building our legacies every day of our lives. You could live to be 100. It's not that long in the scheme of the age of the world, right? And so legacy is something that I think, unfortunately, we only start to think a lot about when handed a cancer card or handed some other difficult life experience. But in reality, every single person, hopefully all of you who are listening are 100% healthy. We're all building our legacy every day. Cancer just reminds us to do it more mindfully because we are more aware of how precious that time is.
My husband says, thank you so much for this inspirational talk. You're all resilience personified. Thanks for watching, hubby. And this might be one of your relatives. Oh, that's your mom. All right. Hey, Mom. Good to meet you. I'm so glad to see all of the support that exists. When I was diagnosed in 1989, little if any support existed. Thank you, Mom, for sharing that. And we are inspired by you, Mom, because you were diagnosed in 89, 90, and that's who knows math? How many years ago was that? 30 years?
She's actually a math teacher.
Oh, really? So that's like 30 something years
34,
ago.
34, but she's a math teacher. So if she could talk, she would tell you.
Well, Gilda, your 34 survivorship is definitely, an inspiration for us. And my last question is, and this, I really want your guys' honest answer. I'm wearing black today. So is Renee. Lauren is wearing blue. Sally, you're wearing red. We're not wearing pink. And Sally, I saw something that you posted about the whole pink thing. So just want a quick answer on this one. Is pink a trigger for good or for bad? Because, in October, we see pink everywhere. And I want to know, what does the pink everywhere do to you emotionally?
I can go quickly just because I did post about what I would call pink washing. I personally, I am grateful for the awareness for living with something that has benefited from decades of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There has been a lot of money funneled into research over many decades that no doubt funded treatments I'm on because of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So there is gratitude for that. However, you walk outside in October and there is pink everywhere. One thing I posted about on LinkedIn was walking into work one day a few years ago, and it was Wear Pink to Work Day. And in that moment, I went from just having, showing up at work to do work to like being reminded about cancer.
Yeah.
And for those of us who live this every day, we are very aware, right?
Yeah.
Every single day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wish it would shift from that in your face pink, some of which, by the way, products, money doesn't really go anywhere that's actually funding anything remotely close to research or anything at all. And I wish it would be more about advocacy, more about equity. Look, I have a background in DEI, and October is 31 days, and there is one day dedicated to metastatic breast cancer. It's October 13th. Pink is not representative of metastatic breast cancer. Pink, teal, and green are. And so just feeling more inclusivity in October, I think, would be a gift so that no one feels unrepresented or triggered unnecessarily by something in cancer land that doesn't feel fully representative.
Thanks for sharing that. Renee?
Yeah, I think, I think what you're referencing, the triggers, I think that's what's so interesting about cancer, right? Here we're 4 women and we have 4 very unique experiences, plus some commonalities about our experience with cancer. And so I think that this idea of pink being representative of all individuals with cancer is a misnomer.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that pink may trigger some people and not trigger other people. For me, pink doesn't really do anything. And as you said, right, living with cancer, whether you haven't had it in years or you're living with it day to day, you never forget that you are somebody who has cancer or could get cancer again at any moment. Mm-hmm. So the pink for me, I see it as people trying to support us and bring awareness, but I will also say it's really, really important about, my husband went to Macy's the other day and he paid an additional $5 for a donation, and then he gets a 20% off, right? So it becomes very commercialized. And once again, with reference to the pink washing, we don't know where the funds are actually going. It's personally not a trigger to me, but it's not representative of, I don't know. It's not representative of where I think we're all at. And once again, pink, is reminiscent of like pretty little boxes with a pink ribbon. And there's really nothing pretty about what we go through. I will say that my very first time I walked in to get a mammogram, I remember seeing the big pink ribbon. And so pink ribbons for me in that capacity is a trigger, right? Mm-hmm. When I see the pink ribbon, that's actually what I think about. That when I walked in and got my first mammogram, I remember seeing it on the wall thinking, this isn't me. I don't know why they're calling me back. This has nothing to do with me. It's really nice that they're honoring all these other women, but it's not me, right? Mm-hmm. So we all have triggers in some way, but.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. Lauren?
For me, the pink month really is, it's always felt like more like they can see the forest but not the trees. Like we're going to talk about cancer, but no one individually. And so actually the first year I was diagnosed with cancer, October came and I was like, yes, I'm going to be like, they're going to throw a party every time I walk in a store. I'm going to get free stuff. Like, I'm like, no one said anything to me the whole time. I think I was bald then too. Like in this year, no one has mentioned one thing to me as an individual during Pink Month, like nothing. And so I feel like in many ways it can be isolating because everyone's talking about what you're going through, but no one's looking at you. And I've always found October to be one of the most isolating months. Because there's no personal acknowledgement about the people. It's all about the disease. And I think that's very typical of the conversation of cancer in general, that we're talking about the disease more than the people that they're actually walking through, the people who are having to live with the disease. So that's the first piece. The second piece is I'm just concerned that as we continue to do more about cancer awareness, we do perpetuate this idea that you're going to die of cancer. I think that again, it's shifting. The statistics are shifting. When I was diagnosed, living 10 years with metastatic disease was not a thing, and now it is. And so I think as we shift, I don't see October shifting away from cancer equals death. And I really just want us to stop talking about cancer equaling death, because it still equals a lot of life. There's a lot of life. And I've had 5 really close people die this year. I recognize that cancer is still taking people, but I know a lot of metastatic women living with cancer as well. And so I just think as things shift, we need to shift the conversation in October as well.
I love it. The reason why I asked is because I don't like the pink myself. And that's the reason why I wanted to hear other people's opinions. It's not that it's triggering for me, but it's almost like a little bit of what you all said, especially what Lauren said. It just, to me, the pink doesn't feel like life. It feels like the complete opposite. You know, it just feels like illness. And I'd rather it be orange or something else that show, or green that shows, but I agree that shows growth or life or hope. Pink does not feel hopeful to me. It feels like we're stuck in this pink place. It doesn't feel like happiness or Barbie. It just feels like sickness, illness. So I wanted to get you guys' opinions on that. And I know it was meant well, but to Lauren's point, things are shifting, but this whole thing is not shifting. And interesting that you said, no one's looking at you during October and saying, hey, can I pray for you? Or are you, they're not looking at you, but they're, but everywhere is pink and there's, discounts for, if you donate here and donate here, it becomes very commercial and not personal. Ladies, you have been a tremendous blessing to me personally today, and I'm sure to the audience and to those on the replay. Thank you so much, really, for sharing your stories, and thank you for your courage and your openness and just your life. And I just, my word to you today is continue to live to the fullness of what, the universe, God, whatever you believe in has for you, but continue to live, because you are here and we're going through this thing for a purpose, and you are here for a reason. And I know, again, that you've inspired a lot of people today. So thank you so much for being here. And for the audience, and for Gilda, especially Gilda, thank you for popping on and just giving us just your encouragement. And as Peter said, Peter's a scientist in the cancer space. And as he says, cancer does not equal death. Thank you so much, Peter and team, for watching. And until next time, I'll see you all. Ladies, just stay 1 second for me.